Hello everyone, welcome back to Wix Ideas, and in this tutorial we're going to be looking at the Wix Realtime API. So the Realtime API facilitates real-time communication and enhances the interactive experiences for your users within the Wix Velo application. Now this is an example of how you can make use of the Wix Realtime API, which as we have here is a voting system. Now what I want to do is to be able to allow anyone who is currently on this page to see when the count increases or reduces when someone votes on an item. So I just clicked on that and the value has changed or increased, and when I click on that again it on heart and also reduces the count. Now let's preview this on an incognito window to see how the real-time API works. Great, so this is my live website where I'm currently logged in, and this is an incognito window where no one is logged in. So when I click on this item to heart it, the heart increases and it also increases for the other user, and when I go ahead and unheart that, it reduces and also reduces for the other user. So this is how the real-time API is, and I want to share with you how to create this voting system and also to share with you how to use the real-time API to increase or reduce the number of counts for everyone who is currently logged on that particular page. Now before we get started, please don't forget to smash the subscribe button, give this video a like, and you can also turn on your bell notification to be the first to know of my future videos. Also leave a comment in the comment section if you have any question or have any video recommendation around Wix or Wix Studio. Alright, so before we get started on the editor, we're going to start out with understanding what the Wix Realtime API really is. So what the real-time API is just a module that serves the purpose of enabling real-time communication within any Wix application. And one of the most important things that we can note here is that we do have a real-time front end and the real-time back end. So what the real-time back end does, it allows us to publish messages to a channel. So we can create a channel where we want to send specific type of messages, and anyone who is subscribed to that channel on the front end can actually receive that message. And so what we want to do is to be able to publish messages from our backend, which in this case is the total number of members who actually voted, and then we're going to receive or subscribe to that channel on our front end and receive that particular message, and then we're going to refresh our data set which is connected to this particular number. So I'm going to share with you the step-by-step method of doing this, and there are a couple other things like the permission routers, so you can add permissions or you can check permissions and all of that, but we're not going to be going deep into that. This is just going to be a simple tutorial sharing with you how the real-time API works using a real-life example. I have the code right here and you can find the link in the description below, and we're going to be going step by step on the code to share with you what you need to change and how you need to configure this to make it yours. So the code is very simple and I'm going to share with you every single step that you need to know. Before we move on to the development of this feature, I want to give a shout out to Hezbollah Khalifa, who actually requested for this video on how to use the real-time API. So thank you for the recommendation. This video is for you. And if you have any questions or you want to leave a video recommendation, you can let me know in the comment section. You can shoot me a message on my website at wixideas.com/contact. Alright, so this is the editor where I'll be working on. And the very first thing I want to do is to create a database or a CMS. So let's head over to our CMS over here, click on that and then add to site. Now if this is your first time, it's going to look this way. So let's head over to the collection over here and create our collection. So let's click over here, start from scratch and click on next. So here we're going to give it a name. I'm going to call mine votes. We're going to leave it at multiple items and click on create. Now once you've created that, we need only two fields to make this functional, and the very first field that we need is an array field. So click on add field and then scroll all the way down until you get to JavaScript, and then click on the array field and then click on choose field type. Now here we're going to give it a name, and this is the field that's going to contain all the IDs of the site members who actually hearted the item. So I'm going to call this voters and then click on save. Now once this is done, we need another field, which is the field that counts the number of voters or member IDs that are in this field. So let's go ahead and add a field, and then this field is going to be a number field. Now let's click again on choose field type, and here we're going to call it vote count. Now once you're done, click on save. You can go ahead and hide this title field because we don't really need it. So by the time you're done, your collection should look this way, and what you want to do basically is to make sure we go over to the more action options and click on the permissions and privacy. Now this is where we set who can actually add content or update content on this particular collection. So who can view, anyone can view. Who can add content, we want only site members who are logged in to add content. Who can delete, we want site member. Who can update, we also want the site member. So go ahead and click on save, and once you're done you can close up your CMS, and let's head back to our page. Now this is the system we have. I have an icon and a text. The design is entirely up to you, but I'm just going to keep mine very simple with just one icon and just one single text. Now let's head over to the dev mode and turn on our dev mode. Now this allows us to start writing code into our website. So go ahead and click on the page code to close the sidebar, and here we're going to maximize our code section. So once you're done, we can head over to this particular page. Now remember that we're going to be adding the Wix Realtime API, and I'm just going to share quickly what these APIs actually do. So we need two parts of the Wix Realtime API, and the first part is the Wix Realtime backend. Now that part is a module that serves different purposes with Wix, and one of the functionalities is that the module contains functionality for publishing messages on channels that site visitors can subscribe to, and for managing channel permissions. And one of the use cases is implementing a messaging system or having a polling mechanism, just as we're doing right now. Now for the Wix Realtime front end, this is the part that allows us to subscribe to messages that are being published from the back end. So basically the Wix Realtime API just allows us to send and receive messages across a single channel. So let's go ahead and actually start out with the first part of this code. Now we need to copy this code into a file, and we're going to name that file Realtime. So you can copy this name, and then you can go over to your website and head over to the Velo sidebar and click on the public and back end. So go over to the back end and create a new back end file. So I'm going to click on the JSW and name this the realtime.jsw. Now inside of this file, we're going to copy this piece of the code and then paste it into our backend realtime.jsw. Now what this is going to do is just to create a function that is going to publish our messages. So we're going to look at that part pretty soon in the front end. So go back to that page where your voting system is. So this can be on any page, but mine is on the first page or the home page of my website. So let's go back again and maximize our page section. Now we can go back to our page, and as you can see, we have a couple other libraries or APIs. So let's go ahead and copy these libraries and then bring them to this very top section of your code. Now we're going to be using the Wix Data to store all of our votes because we just created a collection. So we're going to save all our votes there. We're going to query the votes, we're going to update the votes, and then over here we're using the Wix members to get a current member who is logged in. We're going to be checking things like their IDs and so on, and we are also going to use the authentication to check if they are logged in or not. We're going to be using the Wix location front end to actually reload the page after the user has logged in, and we're going to be using the Wix Realtime front end again to subscribe to messages that are being published from the back end. And we're going to be calling the function from our back end, which is called a publish message over here. We're going to be importing that to our front end. So as you can see, we're importing that from the realtime.jsw file that we have just created from our back end code. Now the next part is to import our already function. As you can see, we already have an already function, but the only difference here is that this is an async already function. So you can copy this async and bring it to your already available already function and just paste it right here. Now the async await is going to help us to directly access the value of certain APIs such as the Wix member. But next in this part of the code, let's scroll all the way down until we get to this function called the query member. Let's copy this function and we're going to add this function onto our website, but then we're not going to add it directly into our already function, but here below the already function. Now what this function actually does is that it queries the collection that we just created, and then it also inserts a value on empty item into our collection if we don't have any items yet. So let's go ahead and tweak things a little bit. Let's first of all change the collection ID. So head over to your databases, go over to your votes and click on this to copy the collection ID. Now you can bring this and replace it right over here and here as well. Now here we're also going to replace the field key of our voters field. So go back to your databases and then click on this to expand the options that we have. And here over here, let's click on this to copy the field ID of our voters field. Now we're going to replace that over here. Now once you're done, that is all we need to do for this particular function. But let's head back to our code and begin to import all of our constants and variables. So copy this right over here and let's begin to import our constants and variables. We're going to use this across our code. So let's begin to learn what these actually are. Now the very first one is a constant that contains the value for our current member who is logged in, such as the member ID. And the item data, well, this is a function that returns all of the items that we have for our query. So this returns all the items we have on our collection. So when that is being searched, it returns all the items that we have. And then next we have the votes array. Now this is a variable where we check if the item data exists. So if it exists, then we just assign it the value of the item data. So over here, we can see this keyword that says voters field key. Now again, that is the voters field key from our collection. So you can go back to your database, expand this. Then over here, you can click on this to copy the ID. And we're just going to check if there is a value within the item data.voters. And then if there's an item, then we're just going to assign this value to it. But if it's empty, then we're just going to leave it as an empty array. And then next we have a constant that is a boolean that checks if the member is logged in or not. And then we also have two other constants for the icons that we're going to be using, and you can see the string over here as URLs for the icons that we're making use of. Now you can replace this to any icon that you want. I'm going to show you exactly how to get the URL. So first you need to head over to your media, and here you're going to expand your media. Now you can import any icon that you want and place them in a folder that is called do not delete. And you can create folder by clicking on this button, and that will create a folder for you. Now I have two icons over here, and each of these icons have the particular URLs. So you can click on any of the icons that you want, head over to the file info, and over here the URL, click on copy URL. Now you're going to copy that URL and place it inside of your code. This is for the full heart and this is for the empty heart. So you can always go back to your code and make sure that you're placing the right URL in the right constant. So as you can see, this is for the full heart and this is the URL for it, and also for the empty heart. Now let's move on to the next part of the code, which is for the real-time API. Now let's copy this section of the code and place it inside of our code section, and here we have the real-time API. And as you can see, we have a couple of errors, which here is the channel for the Wix real-time API, and we also have a data set that we are missing. But first of all, let's fix the error for the channel. And over here you can see we have a channel constant as well that we're supposed to also import into our code. So place that into your code, and here is the name. So this is what the Wix real-time backend and front end uses to check which message needs to be sent where. So if you're subscribed to this channel, you're going to receive message from this channel if you're on this page. So we can rename these and call it the votes channel. Amazing. So now we need to fix the dataset errors. So let's head back to our page, click on this plus sign, head over to CMS and click on add dataset. Now this dataset is just going to be a connector between our database or collection that we just created and our physical element on our website. So let's click on this dataset to set it up. So go to settings, and over here choose the collection that you want to connect it to. So mine is called votes, and we just want to read the items, and that is all we need to do. So that is enough, and we can go ahead and click on close. Now click on your text element, head over to this icon that says connect to CMS, and then let's connect it to this exact dataset. So this is called a votes dataset, and we're going to choose what field in our database that we just created that this needs to connect to. So mine is going to be the vote count, which is the text that displays the total number of votes that we have. So go ahead and click on close. Now click on your dataset again and head over to your code, and over here in the properties panel you can change the ID to what you want, but mine I'm going to leave it as dataset1. So copy that and bring it over here and just paste that into this section with the errors. So basically what we're doing is that after we've published the message, we just want to refresh the dataset, and the message is published only when an item is being updated into our collection, which is the next part that we're going to move into in this tutorial. So here is the next part, which is where we check if the member is logged in or not logged in. So go ahead and copy all of this section and head over to your code and paste that right in. Now we have a condition here that checks if the member is logged in. Then we're going to check if the member actually has an item or already hearted an item in the database. And we know if the member has hearted an item if their ID is inside of the voters field. If their ID is in there, then we're going to change the icon of our heart icon to the full heart. Now, as you can see, we have a couple errors here that we need to fix right away. And this is the icon for the heart that we have. So if you click on this, you can see that the ID is called Hearter. You can name this anything that you want. I'm going to leave mine as Hearter. So copy that and paste it into your code for all the places where you can find the heart icon ID. Alright, so as you can see, we've already checked if the member is logged in. Then we need to check if the member already hearted or voted. If the member already voted, we're going to change the ID to the full heart. Else, if the member is not logged in, then we're going to change it to an empty heart. And the next part of this section is the most important part that makes all this work, which is the part where we actually click on that particular icon or the heart icon. Alright, so when we click on the heart icon, we're going to check again if the member is logged in. If the member is logged in, we're going to perform all of these actions here. If the member is not logged in, we're going to prompt them to log in and then reload the page. So this is where we actually make use of the Wix location. And here we also make use of the authentication to check if the member is logged in. So inside of this section, you can see we have a couple of code that we need to also update. And the first thing we're going to check is we're going to check the index or the position that the user is in the array that we created in our collection. And then we're also going to check another condition, and the condition is that if the member does not have a vote or the member's ID is not in the voters field, then we're going to push in the member's ID into the voters array, which we had earlier or kind of declared earlier. And then we're going to change the icon to the full heart icon. So else, if the member already has voted for the item, then we're going to remove or splice their ID from that particular field and then change the icon to an empty heart icon. And the next thing we want to do is that we're going to assign the voters array information back into the voters field. So as you can see, this is the voters field key, which we got earlier, and it's called voters. So copy the field key and replace it over here. Now the item data is now containing all the recent information about the action that was just performed. So now we're going to update the item data, and to do that we also need to get the collection ID. So the collection ID again is going to be the votes. So copy the votes and just replace it right here. And the data that we are updating is the item. And then once that is done, we are also going to go ahead and publish a message to our channel. Now this message we're publishing will not really be used because what we're doing in this case over here is just refreshing the data set. So we're just going to publish any message at all. So what I did here was just to publish the message of the total count of the items that was just updated. So as you can see, we also need to change the voters count field key, and you can head over to the databases and expand this and go over to the vote count, copy the ID and just replace that over here. Now we're officially done with the front end part of this code, and we have one more thing to do in order to automate this particular count. And what that is that we're going to add a data hook to our collection. So go over to collection and click on these icons here, and then go over to add data hooks. I'm going to add two data hooks to your collection. The first is going to be before inserting the item and before updating the item. So let's go ahead and add and edit code. Now this is where you're going to add the last piece of your code, and if you go back to the code page, you can see that we have a file called the data.js, which is exactly what we have over here. So if your database name is called votes, then you can copy exactly what I have over here and just paste it into your code section. If not, just go ahead and copy what is within each of the functions and just paste it right here this way. They are doing exactly the same thing. The only thing is that we're just making sure that when a new item is inserted, we count, and when an item is updated, we count. Now we have the item here, and the items are the individual rows that we have in our collection. So what we're going to do is that we want the vote count field, which is right over here. So copy this ID and replace that here to be equal to the item of voters field key, which is right here, dot length. So basically we're just going to check the length of how many people or how many IDs are in our voters field. So you can go exactly and just copy what you already did here and replace that right over here. Now that brings us to the last part of the code and ready to publish and actually preview these on the live side. Great. So I'm on the live side and I'm about to click on this item, but I'm not able to click on it because there is an error. And what we can do is that we can head back to our editor and click on the Wix logo, and we can head over to the developer tools and go over to logs, and then we can open up the event. So open this up and we can see live event here. So let's reload this page and see what issues we have with our code. So right here you can see we have a couple of errors, and the first error we have is that the user does not have permission to insert on votes collection, and that must have been because I added a permission that only site members can actually insert items. All right, so if that is the case, then what we need to do is to add the members area that allows us to actually log in. Right, so let's head over to add and then go to the community, and here you can add the members area. So add this to site, and over here we can just drag this to this section so we can see that on our live page. So let's publish this and view that on our live page again. All right, so remember that in the code we said that only members can actually insert, so this makes sense that we actually allow everybody to log in. So the first thing we need to do is to log in, or you can make that page to be protected by login, forcing them to log in first before they can actually insert items, because they need their IDs to be inserted, or you can leave it for anyone to view whether they're logged in or not. All right, so I've just logged into the site, and I think I'm able to actually click on this item. So when I click on this, it changes the icon and increases the count. Now let's go back to our database just to have a view of how that looks like. All right, so this is my database, and as you can see, we have the voters array with my site members ID, and we can also see the count that is here. All right, so what I want to do next is to actually open these on two different windows and see if the count increases or not. All right, so I've just opened a different window, an incognito window, and here is the votes section, and we want to see if the Wix Realtime API works or not. So when I click on this to on hearts, it changes the count to 0, and also changes the count to 0 for the other user. So when I click on that again, it also changes to 1 and also changes to 1 here. Now, since I'm not logged in, if I click on this, it's going to prompt login, and when I log in, it's going to reload the page, and then I can now successfully add or heart the item or vote for the item. Now let's try to log into a different account and see how that actually works. All right, so I've just logged into a different account, and as you can see, I have the counts right there, and I have the empty heart icon because I have not hearted this page or voted for this page yet. So when I click on this, it should change the heart and also increase the number by 2, and also increases this by 2. So we can see this live example of a real-time voting system using the Wix Realtime API. So this is a very simple tutorial on how the Wix Realtime API works, but there are other examples such as messaging and other real-time experiences that you like your site visitors to actually enjoy. Probably having a comment section with the Wix Realtime API. So if this video was useful to you, please don't forget to smash the subscribe button and also give this video a thumbs up. Let me know in the comment section if you really did enjoy this tutorial, and thank you very much for staying with me to the end of this video, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.